Let's talk about Sherrone Moore here. So, Joe, we've continued our process here with first-year head coaches. Now we are with Michigan head coach Sherrone Moore. What says you about his first-year expectations as a new Wolverines head man?
Yeah, I was a very big champion of promoting Sherrone Moore. I even went as far as to say early on in the cycle, in parts of the season, that Sherrone Moore has proven enough to me to easily be a head coach at a P5 program. Maybe a team like Syracuse was one that made a lot of sense that he could have taken over and put them in a really good position. But here he is taking over this Michigan program. I think realistically, with the schedule that they're facing, losing their starting quarterback, J.J. McCarthy, losing Blake Corum, there are 6 offensive linemen going to the NFL Combine, Blake, from the University of Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
It is going to be damn near impossible to replicate a national championship winning season. We need to get that out of the way, and that should not be expected. I think what is realistic, having to face, these are all the difficult games on their schedule. They have to play USC, they have to play Washington, they have to play Texas, Oregon, and Ohio State.
Where's the USC game?
Where is it?
Yeah, is it in the big house?
I'm checking that right now.
Because if that game's in the big house, they ain't losing.
Well, that was what I wrote down as a game that they're going to win. I really think that it's in Ann Arbor. They are going to beat USC. 9-3 though is my expectation for them. I really think that 9-3 is a very, very good jumping off point. This is not like, and there's a lot of comparisons that are going to be drawn between Sherrone Moore and Marcus Freeman because it's the same area of the country, same circumstance of, premier big name, older coach leaves and interim coach that has stepped in takes over, all of that. There's a lot of comparisons, but the difference is not all of the premier elite players on Notre Dame's roster had gone and left. Kyle Hamilton was still there. Michael Mayer was still there. Blake Fisher, Joe Alt. A lot of those guys were still sticking around. Sherrone Moore starting from scratch, 9-3 would be a fantastic first season for him.
I don't want to say, he's starting off in a place for the first-year head coach that you got to admit, Joe, not a lot of people start off with. But he doesn't have the experience. I don't think 9-3 is very off, really. I got to be honest. I think 10-2 is not completely off with them. They still are very talented. You know how much I like Alex Orji, the quarterback there. I think that they run. I mean, look, he's an offensive line guy that had play. I mean, Joe, we're talking about a guy that had play calling duties for Harbaugh, right? Like, I don't think Sherrone Moore is going to be a guy that, and Michigan is going to be a team that you look at and be like, man, we're going to get them. They can't get over the hump. I think that they could be a 10-2 team. And Joe, I got to be real with you. If they're 10-2, they're going to the playoff.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Because 10-2 implies that they're in the top 3 of the conference. Yes, absolutely.
Now, a lot of things will be said about Orji and him throwing the football, and how will they look offensively if they recruited well enough there. They're losing a lot of offensive linemen. They got a lot to replace, Joe, and that's why you say 9-3 it would be a comfortable place. I thought and still remain that I thought it was a lazy hire, just automatically promoting him from within. But I got to admit, man, I think that they're good enough. They're deep enough. I don't know if I can see a world, Joe, of them being below 9-3. Like who beats them?
Well, right. I just brought up all their upcoming matchups, and that would imply
Penn State. Do they play? Did you say Penn State?
No, they don't play Penn State. I don't believe.
Okay, so USC, Ohio State.
The big games on their schedule are USC, Washington, Texas, Ohio State, and Oregon, and that would imply a team like USC or Washington.
Oh no, they're gonna get the
pulls out an upset.
They're gonna get the cheeks clapped by Texas.
Yeah, I kind of just assumed that Texas would be a loss.
Texas for them. Gonna roll all over them.
So I mentioned though, Blake, that they're losing a lot of important players. They're losing a lot of their offensive line. But conversely, on this end,
and they got Oregon,
and they have Oregon. They all are also, though, bringing back some of the best players in the country at certain positions. And I'm talking about Mason Graham at defensive tackle. I'm talking about Will Johnson at corner, and I'm talking about Colston Loveland at tight end. Those are all, I would argue, the top 3 returning players at their positions. That is the best defensive tackle, cornerback, and tight end returning to college football in 2024.
I don't disagree with that necessarily.
Like that is huge.
Upset Ohio State again, and I swear to God, if Sherrone Moore beats Ohio State and they lose,
Ryan Day's got to get fired. I'm just think he's got to get fired if they lose to Sherrone Moore at home. Is it? Yeah, it's at home. It would be at Ohio State.
I'm not.
Yeah,
sure.
It's at Ohio State. So if you lose to Sherrone Moore at home again, you have to fire Ryan Day. With that roster, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it.
If he goes 11-1 and Ryan Day makes the playoffs and they get to a national championship, there's so much more in the season that would have to play out.
They would have to win a national title to rectify that.
Maybe. That's a brutal stretch. That's a brutal schedule. Ohio State, Oregon, and Texas. Joe, all 3 of these teams are going to be playoff teams.
I mean, the inverse of that is, imagine if you steal one of those. You steal one of those games.
Team. You just got to win one of them. You got to go 1-2 in those 3 games.
Yeah.
And you can't mess around and lose to like USC.
I mean, I'd go as far as to argue a 9-3 Michigan team with close losses to all 3 of those opponents could be the last team into the playoff.
Very well could be.
It's very feasible.
Very feasible. And again, you're talking about for a first year. But let me say this and add this on, because this is my main thought when we discussed that we're going to talk about Sherrone Moore, and that I've had 2 weeks to kind of think on it. Joe, if there's any fan base in the country that goes 9-3 and should allow a coach that 3, 4, 5 years ago 9-3, God dog, it's Michigan, because you just let Harbaugh do it. So right. I mean, just steady the ship, get your culture in there, bring your guys in there, and then you'll be fine.
That needs to be reiterated. I think a lot of Michigan fans are surprisingly very level-headed about this. I would at least hope that they are, that there isn't this assumption that they're immediately going to win.
They're pissed at Harbaugh.
I don't know what they expect. I mean,
they expected him to leave some of the staff behind.
That was never going to happen in a million years.
I mean,
that wasn't going to happen.
I never really understood that, by the way. Like, Harbaugh's the one that hired that staff.
Right. All of those guys came to coach for Harbaugh, and a lot of them have aspirations to coach in the NFL. So it's like, what do we expect here? Not to mention the fact that Sherrone Moore was able to get Wink Martindale. Like that's not going to completely solve a lot of their problems. If anything, I would argue maybe it's even an upgrade that was who they were able to hire. A lot of, as you're talking about, though, they just need to be patient. If this thing, even if they go 8-4 in this first year, patience is key. Patience is very key, because you gave Harbaugh patience, who had won at Stanford already, won in the NFL, was a Michigan man, had graduated there. You gave him time, even though you were yelling at him the whole time. Give Sherrone Moore a little time. It might take 2-3 years. BetOnline remains your top spot for all of your live betting action and contests. NFL, college football, UFC, NHL are all in full swing. BetOnline is your number one source for wagering news, odds, trends, and predictions, with both desktop and mobile access at any time. Head to BetOnline today and use promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for 50% off your first deposit. That is a 50% welcome bonus. BetOnline, where the game starts.